For a city of its size, Dublin has a considerably large number of stadiums that are used for an especially wide variety of sports. With that being said, here are the stadiums and arenas of Dublin, Ireland. We start off at Parnell Park, which is probably not the best place to start, to be honest, as it's one of the most simple stadiums you'll see throughout the video. All of the stands are single-tiered. The main stand is the only one with actual seating, the rest is terraced. But at least it's mostly undercover. It only gained floodlights in 2005. I mentioned in the intro that the people of Dublin, and indeed Ireland, are interested in many different sports. Well, this place hosts hurling and Gaelic football, two sports that barely exist anywhere else. That's more like it. Aviva Stadium was built on the site of Lansdowne Road Stadium, which opened in 1872 and was the premier rugby and football stadium in the country. It was also one of the oldest rugby stadiums in the world. Aviva Stadium has taken up the same role of hosting the national rugby and football teams. But that is about the only similarity it has with the old stadium, as you can probably see for yourself. Interestingly, the transparent exterior, made from a combination of plastic and glass, was chosen not purely for aesthetic purposes, but they were not allowed to significantly obstruct the sunlight that shines into the windows of the neighbouring homes. Either way, I think it looks fantastic, inside and out. It's probably one of my favourite stadiums in Europe. I bet the local botanical society is rather disappointed that the stadium isn't fully enclosed, because it would have made for an excellent greenhouse. They could have grown entire tropical trees in here. 3 Arena was built on the site of Point Theatre and incorporated some of the pre-existing structure into the design. Although it certainly doesn't look like it from the outside, this is the largest indoor sports venue in Dublin. Well, I should rephrase that. It's the largest indoor arena, but it's not really a sports venue. It was made for shows, primarily concerts. There's not even a conventional arena layout in here. It's more of a stretched out amphitheatre arrangement. Despite not having a sporting tenant, it's still one of the busiest arenas in the world. Dalymount Park. It might be hard to believe, but at one point in time, this was considered to be the home of Irish football. It once saw a crowd of nearly 50,000 when Ireland faced England in 1957. The Irish team doesn't play here anymore, but Bohemian FC have been here since it opened in 1901, back when the Kingdom of Bohemia was still a thing. This is certainly not the prettiest stadium in the city, in fact, the opposite might be true. But spectators do get a view of a rather large Jesus building peeping over the top of the main stand. There have been plans to redevelop this place for a while, and the club are planning on finally getting it done by 2027. Morton Stadium, also known as the National Athletic Stadium. This is one of the few athletic stadiums that is used exclusively for track and field and not football or rugby. That's probably partially due to the fact that there are so many other similar sized stadiums in Dublin that can serve that purpose. It once included a velodrome that was financed by the chairman of Guinness. It didn't last all that long though. Perhaps when cycling while intoxicated became illegal, Guinness lost interest in paying for the maintenance costs. Tulla Stadium. This is a stadium of contrasts. Whilst the exterior consists of raw materials with no added colour, the interior could hardly be any more colourful if it tried. It reminds me a little of a more extreme version of Twickenham Stoop in London in that respect. The stadium was built in stages rather than all at once. In fact, whilst the ground opened in 2009, the northern stand was completed just this year. They do need all the stands they can get because the Shamrock Rovers average the highest attendance in Irish football, around 7,500. So you don't see much of those pretty coloured seats on game day. Tolka Park is situated on the banks of the River Tolka. I was wondering which was named after which. Presumably the one that came first, right? Well, I did look up the River Tolka, but unfortunately, Google didn't tell me when it was built. I do know that the stadium was built in 1924, meaning it's a 100-year-old stadium. And it certainly looks its age. The capacity even has to be restricted for safety reasons. It was an interesting choice to put the floodlight towers in front of the seats. That might be because there's barely any room behind the stand as it backs onto a street. Malahide Cricket Club ground. From above, you'd hardly believe that this ground can accommodate 11,500 spectators, and is Ireland's preeminent cricket ground. That is because almost the entire capacity is comprised of portable stands that are brought in during the height of the cricket season. And I suppose it is quite fitting that there aren't some big permanent concrete structures, because the ground is situated on the serene Malahide Castle grounds. It's around 450 metres away from the castle itself. National Basketball Arena. I don't know all that much about Irish basketball, but I think I'd be able to guess which NBA team is the most popular here. Oh, Celtic, yeah, that would make sense. But I was thinking the Nuggets, because who doesn't love Nuggets? Whether or not basketball as a whole is popular in Ireland, they have themselves a rather nice place to call home. The roof is probably the standout feature here. I can think of a few college arenas in the States with a similarly pointy roof, but the fact that it's wooden, albeit laminated wood, gives the arena a bit of a cozy old-fashioned vibe, despite the fact that it was built in the 90s. Croke Park is comfortably the largest and most famous stadium in the country, although it has been known to disappoint frog enthusiasts who were visiting Dublin expecting it to be something else entirely. It's home to the GAA headquarters, and in its many decades of operation, it's been the site of plenty of famous sporting events, but also one very tragic event. You might be thinking it was some kind of a crush or a stampede or a stand collapsing, but it was actually the site of a massacre. On the 21st of November 1920, during the Irish War of Independence, in response to 14 of their officers being assassinated earlier that day, British authorities indiscriminately fired into a packed Croke Park crowd, killing 14 people, including children. It came to be known as Bloody Sunday, not to be confused with the other Bloody Sunday. Back to the current day stadium, the overwhelming majority of the capacity is coming from the U-shaped structure. However, the most famous of the stands is this small terrace at the northern end, known as Hill 16. As you can see, it has remained much smaller than the rest of the stadium, due to the fact that it backs onto a train track. RDS Arena. RDS stands for the Royal Dublin Society, which is a philanthropic organisation founded way back in 1731. They basically had the aim to make Ireland great again by means of supporting cultural, economic and sporting endeavours. The primary use for this stadium back in the day was for horse shows. To be clear, I'm talking about stuff like show jumping, not BoJack Horseman kind of stuff. It wasn't until the late 20th century that they started playing football here, and as late as the mid-2000s that Leinster Rugby moved in. With their arrival came some modernisations. It's looking good nowadays. Next door, the Royal Dublin Society also has some halls, but they're very small and are not used for sporting purposes. Donnybrook Stadium is the former home of Leinster Rugby. You can see why they moved to RDS Arena, because not only is it bigger, but it's almost a literal stone's throw away. Similarly, Donnybrook Stadium started out as a site used for non-sporting purposes. The Donnybrook Fair, to be specific. It was just a green field back in those days, and this current stadium was only built in 1964. The Leinster reserve team does still call this place home. Richmond Park. This was originally a site that was used by the British Army as a recreational area, before they were kicked out in 1922. It's been used for football for 99 years, and since 1939, has been home to a club called St Patrick's Athletic, which is about as Irish as it gets, although they don't have a clover on their crest like the Shamrock Rovers do. The club have made plans in the past to move out of this stadium and build a much bigger all-seater stadium nearby, but clearly that hasn't happened yet. This cozy little ground will have to do for now. So there you have it. Dublin punches well above its weight, just like Dublin-born MMA fighters punch well above their age. Thanks for watching, have a good one.